Hello, everyone, and hello to my email notifications, calendar notifications. I'm Allie Wyatt, and I'm super excited to be here today with a phenomenal founder who has built so much. I'm going to actually introduce her and give you a little bit about her background, but Sarah Kauss is the founder of Swell. But first, I wanted to quickly talk about Female Founder Collective and the 10th House specifically. FFC is a nonprofit grant-making body for female founders around the globe in order to help empower them both socially and economically. And then when it comes to 10th House, it is a new private membership community you can check out on our website whether or not you are eligible. But it really is a place for education, for connections, as well as resources for female founders to grow their business. We have you able to actually find other founders by stage, by industry, by geography. You can find resources such as CRM tools to email service providers. And we have a number of corporate partners that provide really incredible price points and discounts for you to help accelerate your businesses forward. But without further ado, I wanted to introduce Sarah. And Sarah, did I pronounce your name right? Your last name?
Perfectly. Yes.
Fantastic. She is the founder and executive chairwoman of Swell. She is a consumer products leader with a track record in launching companies, building multi-million-dollar successful brands, and assembling high-performance senior leadership teams. An early advocate for ESG businesses, she built a $100 million business in Swell, creating a new category, a beloved brand, and making sustainability more mainstream while helping displace more than 4 billion single-use plastic bottles, which is just unbelievable. She has been recognized as Fortune's 40 Under 40 honoree, EY's Entrepreneurial Winning Woman, and is a member of the 2018 class of Henry Crown Fellows and 2020 class of Braddock Scholars within the Aspen Global Leadership Network at the Aspen Institute. So hugely accomplished, and those are accomplishments that are very hard fought. But I wanted to talk first about the fact that you started Swell back when sustainability was not as much of a thing, right? Like all of a sudden we've all realized that we need to be paying attention and we need to make all of our businesses more sustainable in the long run. How did you have the foresight to do so? Or was it more sort of accidental?
It really started from a place of sustainability. I went to school in Boulder. I always carried a reusable water bottle. It wasn't fashionable. It wasn't insulated. But I found myself, upgrading other accessories in my life, my handbag, my shoes, my other accessories, and my water bottle just wasn't keeping up. So, I think the hardest part as well was taking the plunge and getting started, maybe convincing myself that, the world needed yet another water bottle, and maybe, convincing my friends and family members that I wasn't completely crazy to give up, a pretty good day job, invest my savings and go off and into this idea of starting the business. But I think I was pretty early on the sustainable track, maybe too early. I think one of the things I really had to do was think about what was the messaging in those early days. I like to say that we were light green and not dark green. I wanted to talk about how much plastic we were saving and how much, really the world needed the product. But what I learned in those early days of marketing and talking to customers is I had to lead with the product too. I had to lead with the fact that this is a product that was beautifully made, super stylish, will keep your beverages hot and cold, and then P.S., it's doing something really good for the planet. So in the early days, I called our customers accidental activists, that they were using a product that they were coveting and it was doing good for the world. And now I really think our customers are more purposeful advocates. And I think that, I'd like to take a little bit of credit for that, but I think the world has really caught up to my idea, a decade later.
And you said the scariest part, and you just mentioned this again, of starting Swell was the initial jump into entrepreneurship. You were I believe you were in accounting previous to that, as well as some other roles. But for those who have just started a business, who are debating starting a business, can you share a little bit more about how you made the plunge and then assuage any fears that you had about actually doing it?
Sure. I mean, for me, taking the plunge was just all about worrying that my idea was such a great one that someone else was going to think about it, and I was going to be sitting in my day job, and pick up the newspaper and read about someone else creating this fashionable water bottle on a quest to save the world. And I would always wonder if I could have done it myself. And so for me, it was really the fear of someone else doing what I thought that I could do myself. And to your other question about, like, how did I get comfortable with that fear? I think entrepreneurship really is a journey. There's so many lessons and so many challenges along the way. I think I built my confidence in lots of mini wins, but I also built my skill set in lots of mini failures, and realized that, by the fear of not trying, I was really going to miss out on taking those lessons. So I personally keep a journal, and I really take a few moments, like literally 5 minutes every day. And I write down some things I'm really proud of and some things that didn't go really well. And I've been doing this, for a very long time. And what's really given me a lot of, I think, muscle and muscle memory is how many challenges I was able to figure out in my entrepreneurial journey. And for some reason, whatever the challenge of the day was, I've been able to push through it and find a solution. And at the same time, I've really been humbled by the amount of opportunities and small wins that we had that really gave me that confidence to push on whenever there was a challenge in that journey.
I love that. That's a really interesting practice to start to do. And it's hard for entrepreneurs a lot of time to remember, this is what I have accomplished, because you have so many fires in front of you that you're constantly trying to put out. You don't necessarily stop and sort of congratulate yourself or appreciate what you've accomplished. So that's a really good, helpful tip. I wanted to talk about bootstrapping because so many of our founders go out and they feel like they need to raise massive amounts of capital, or they think that venture funding is the only route. You didn't raise initially, and you put $30,000 of your own savings into the business, and yet you've exceeded $100 million in revenue, which is just a mind-blowing feat, by the way, that I think every single founder out there can appreciate. So many founders are asking themselves what type of funding is right for them. How did you determine that you were going to fund this yourself?
I did bootstrap the company. In fact, today we still haven't ever raised outside capital. But at the same time, that's not the right path for everyone. So, it's great to celebrate everyone's journey. And, in my business, as you mentioned, my background was accounting. I just had to be really careful to make the numbers work. I had to think about margins and unit economics, and pretty much everything we've ever made at the business has been pushed back into the business, because as a growing consumer products company, you actually have to buy more inventory to be able to keep up with the growth. And so you have to keep feeding the machine. But, for me, there was a couple of things that I really appreciated about, not having outside funders. I really wanted to go at my own pace. And I made a lot of mistakes and learned a lot of lessons, as I mentioned, about the messaging and the marketing in the beginning, that I didn't really have the story fully finished until I got in front of a bunch of our consumers and some of our small retailers and tried to pitch a whole bunch of times. And I really wanted to be a luxury product. I wanted to be a high-end fashion accessory. And I was afraid if I had outside funders, they would potentially push me into retail opportunities I wasn't ready for. And so I like to tell the story of Bloomingdale's, that Bloomingdale's said no to Swell for almost 2 years because they said, we don't sell water bottles. And what I really wanted them to see us as a fashion accessory. And now, the story is really positive, is because we're sold in Bloomingdale's and they're a great partner. And I was just afraid that if I had somebody else's capital, then we wouldn't necessarily be able to go at the pace that I wanted to myself. The other part is that we're a mission-driven business, and I've always really wanted to give back to charities, whether it's, working with UNICEF and bringing clean drinking water to people in Africa that don't have access, or, working with Breast Cancer Research Foundation or Project Red, or so many organizations over time. And now I do think that, purpose-driven companies and mission-driven companies are certainly getting funded and are really appreciated, not just by consumers, but by investors. But at the time that I started Swell, I was really afraid that I wasn't going to be able to do everything that I wanted to at the business if I was, potentially going to take, outside capital. So again, it's just my journey. There's so many successful, ways to do this. But I always caveat that was just a personal decision that I made, to where we got today.
What is your favorite thing you think about the fact that you made the decision not to take capital, right? Like, what along your journey did you say, oh, I'm so happy that I chose to bootstrap this myself. When, you might have seen colleagues or other companies that were going out and maybe getting $20 million of investment, et cetera, and might have thought, should we go get capital?
I think it's a really allowed me and the company, for the employees, all the way through to all of our, stakeholders to really focus. We're still very scrappy today because, we don't have a lot of cash and we have just gone through a global pandemic and, still are. And so I think it's really allowed us to keep coming back to the mission and the vision and the purpose of the company. And I think sometimes having a lot of capital can hide a lot of sins, that you don't necessarily need to have the most focus when you have a lot of cash to burn. And so every product decision, every marketing decision, every hire has to really be thought through. And I think that it's just sort of kept the core of Swell really true to itself, even, a dozen years after my founding.
I love that. It's really helpful to know. And I think, a lot of founders get very inspired that you can actually do that, but that it is a different journey, like you mentioned. How did you manage to grow the business without getting outside investor capital, right? You talked a little bit about the fact that you had an accounting background. So this was unit economics were sort of core to your being and how you operated. But, can you talk about some of the mechanics of how you were able to do that and bring on people, take inventory, and really think through the model, especially as you continue to grow exponentially? Like maybe you had a big PO that you got. How did you sort of fund the inventory associated with that, et cetera?
For me, I would say it really came down to two things. I think the first thing for Swell is that we really benefited from building a community and having our product sell organically through word of mouth and not pushing a lot of money into marketing. The benefit of Swell is it's a product that our consumers were taking with them to school and work and the gym and talking about the product, whether they were talking about how it really worked and kept things hot and cold, or how they liked that we work with charity partners, or they just love the color because it matched their nail polish. We were really lucky in that every customer we found, they were putting it on their Instagram. They were buying it for friends and family. So I didn't have to spend a lot of money in marketing. And we really tried to, honor our consumers by, posting their pictures and their stories and really trying to create those advocates that were going to be on the front lines of helping us, tell the story. So I wasn't spending a lot in marketing. Still through today, we haven't spent a lot in marketing. And then the other thing that I think that I did to really help buy the inventory to grow was just to try to talk to some of our big customers and ask for some flexibility. When we were working with the larger retailers and they were asking for net 30, 60, 90 terms, sometimes 120-day terms, just to go in and say, listen, I'm Sarah and this is my business. And you might think we're much bigger than we are, but we just can't float this. And I was actually able to convince some of our large retailers to make deposits on the inventory.
Wow.
I was able to say, listen, we're a hot brand and you really want to carry us, but I'm only going to be able to give you half of the inventory you're buying unless, you're going to be able to front me, so I can. So I was just really open about, the situation that we were in and sort of asked my vendors and partners to partner with me, which has really helped fund our growth.
Yeah, a lot of times people don't think to do that because you think this is the way that things work. I can't go and ask that because they just don't do that. But you never know unless you ask. So it's a really wonderful piece of advice for founders to know about. In terms of sort of looking back over your journey, right? Everybody's had a very different journey, but there has to be sort of those watershed moments, no pun intended, that were the big business decisions, or maybe things that happened, the account that you got or the person you brought on that really created sort of that overnight success that everybody laughs about, right? Like there's no such thing as an overnight success. It's like you've been just grueling through the days and slowly building. Were there any sort of moments like that you can pinpoint, that would be helpful for our founders to know about?
Yeah, I always love that overnight success story. it's fine. It's
You're like, I've been sweating it out over here trying to build this thing
exactly.
for
And I'm
years.
sorry for all the weird beams of light. I just checked into a hotel room and I don't know what's going on with the sun outside, but
No,
I'm
it's
not
really
trying to do
lovely,
a light
actually.
show on you right now, Ali. I would say there's probably like 3 moments that really stand out for me. Back in the early days when I was the only employee, I was also the head of PR and marketing, and I sent a ton of bottles to all the women's magazine, the fashion magazines, and we got a lot of really early press, including the O List in Oprah's magazine, and it was sort of a must-have for summer. The second year of the business, which helped with sales, but it really helped with a lot of credibility. A lot of retailers then said, okay, well, I'm willing to give you a shot if we think customers are going to come in, looking for the brand. I think the second sort of bit of really good luck we had was in one of those early magazines, a retailer from Starbucks read about us and invited me to come out and meet with the Starbucks team. And we did a test in a couple of markets and a number of stores, and we kept selling out, but it was really going to be a small account. And I got very fortunate that I got to meet Howard Schultz. In fact, I almost tackled him at an opening of a Starbucks store. I saw him standing, drinking his espresso. So I basically tackled Howard in a really kind way. And he gave me an hour and a half of his time. And I was able to convince him to go from, I think, about 140 stores to about 10,000 stores, domestic to international. And that really helped from a volume perspective. But one of the really cool things about it was Starbucks that year at Holiday put a giant sign in every store talking about Swell. And so oftentimes they were sold out of the product, but there was a sign saying that Swell was their favorite hydration vessel. So people were, while they're waiting for their drink, would go online, read about us. It was great for brand awareness and really helped us create like a household name. And then I think if I had to really think about it, like the third piece of sort of luck was really part of strategy, and kind of back to the decision not to take on outside capital and not to grow too fast is I decided about 5 years into the journey to create a second line. What we were seeing is that I really created the high-end hydration category, and there was a lot of other competitors moving into the space. And so I decided to create a diffusion line, like a little sister Swell, and it's called Sip by Swell, and launch it in the mass market. We launched with Target, and now it's in a lot of different places too. But I just thought if someone was going to cannibalize us, it should be ourselves, and it should still be a product that's really well made and super stylish and fun that we're proud of at a lower price point. And what we have really found is that our customers that have and use Swell also have and use Sip. They might use it for the gym, or they might use it for their kids.
Is this a smaller product?
It's a smaller. Well, it's actually it's smaller and bigger, and it's more style than fun. Like, it's instead of beautiful marbles and woods, it's squirrels and bacon and eggs, and it's a bit cheeky in its design. But it still looks like it came from the same family, the same house. And so it was a really thoughtful, strategic decision, which I think came at the right time. It was, it was a big volume drive for us. But again, it really helped us with customers finding us and getting our name out there, because we wanted to show up where our customers were shopping.
Got it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go a little bit more into that horizontal expansion, because I think it's an important thing. A lot of founders will be hyper focused. But first, I have to ask, because you got an audience with Howard Schultz. Like, how did you do that? I know you said you tackled him, but any advice on sort of getting to those really hard to reach individuals that might be absolutely pivotal for your business? Because I think that alone could be an entire workshop, right? For founders as they're trying to sort of beat down certain doors.
My advice would be just don't be afraid to ask. I still write to people on LinkedIn. Like, I always go to the most senior person I could find and say, oh, you're the COO of this company. I really want to work with you. And I'm Sarah, and this is my story, but don't stop there. If there's a company you want to work with, find a junior buyer, find, somebody that is, at a different level, and, don't be afraid to ask and explain. What I find is that you'll likely find an entrepreneur within these larger companies that you want to partner with that really want to support people that are out there taking risks and doing things. And, don't be afraid of getting a whole bunch of no's, because eventually you'll find someone that wants to hear your story and partner with you. Just go for it is what I would say. I knew that I was going to really be down on myself if I had to get on the plane from Seattle and fly back east and not have spoken to Howard. So I had the gumption to go over and talk to him, and he was kind enough to give me some time and let me make my whole pitch later on. But I think in so many entrepreneurial journeys, you have those lucky moments, but I think you have to set yourself up for them too.
Love that. It's so beautiful. So let's go back to your product expansion plan, because you started off with the water bottles. Can you talk a little bit about how you decided to sort of go into these other categories and how you formed your moat? As like you said, you had all these competitors that were flooding into the market.
Mm-hmm. I think it was slow and steady. We really think about putting our customer in the middle of every decision that we make. And so, the first Swell bottle was only one size. It was only one color. It was only one SKU. It was a really clean and easy business. And then the customers were saying, wouldn't it be great if you made these in different sizes? Like, we had customers saying, listen, I don't know if you know this, but I put wine in my Swell bottle. Could you please make one the size of a wine bottle, which is our 25-ounce bottle, holds a whole bottle of wine, and it's great to take to a music fest or the park or wherever you're not supposed to be bringing wine.
I had a tennis instructor holding one of those. I was like, that's for wine.
Yeah. Well, it was a lot of water too. I mean, quite honestly, not always wine. It could just be a lot of yoga, water, whatever you're doing. We made a smaller one for kids or for people that just wanted a smaller drink and didn't want to be lugging something heavy around town. It took years then for us. I'm using one of our travelers today with the wide mouth because I'm drinking tea, but it took us years then to say, let's think about an entirely new form factor. And thinking about, are people drinking smoothies? And then we moved into food and lunch boxes. But again, we were really careful not just to throw the Swell logo and label on a whole bunch of stuff. We always wanted to put our customer in the middle and say, would they be surprised if they saw this coming from Swell? And it's always frustrating because as soon as we launch a new product, everyone's just like, I love it. I'm going to buy it. But could you guys have done this 5 or 10 years ago? I've been waiting for it. But I'd rather have customers wait and be happily surprised when we come out than feel like they discovered the brand, they helped us build the brand, and then we just kind of lost our way by coming out with a bunch of SKUs that weren't very purposeful or thoughtful or weren't embracing the mission of the company. And so we've really tried to be careful now, not to foreshadow the future, but we have a whole bunch of new categories that are coming out, which I'm really excited about, but they've been on our roadmap for years. We just wanted to do them in our own way. So there's more coming soon.
So let's talk about that, because in February of 2020, you hired a CEO and then you moved into a broader strategic role. Can you tell us about how you thought through that decision? Because a lot of founders are thinking about, how do I delegate? What's my next sort of step and stage? And then just more broadly, how you've thought about your changing role within the organization. You said you started off in PR, right? And in sales, and you came from an accounting background. Like, how have you sort of determined this is the role that I'm going to take as the company's expanded?
Sure. So I did hire a CEO right before we closed the office due to COVID. It was a long search, and it was like a long decision and process to get there. I had the decision and the insight that I had hired so many good people over the last number of years. And I have found that if you hire a really great person and you trust them and you get out of the way, great things happen. And I started to think about that in my own self. You mentioned the hard, it's hard to delegate. I was still running payroll every 2 weeks when I hired the CEO, which is not the highest and best use of a founder, right? But there's just certain things that I had always done myself, and who would do those things. And so what I found was my highest and best use was probably on the outside of the organization looking out instead of on the inside of the organization looking in, and still, running spreadsheets and attending all the meetings. And I realized that, the brand was actually much bigger than the company. And I really owed it to the brand to be out selling and telling the story and thinking about partnerships and collaborations and how do we take sustainability farther by partnering with other organizations than just in building and growing my own. And it wasn't that I still love Swell. Swell's still my first baby. I just wanted to find someone that I could trust to do the bits and pieces of the business that I felt that someone else could do and maybe do better than I was doing as we were growing. At the same time, I could bifurcate the role, and then I could sort of pick and choose the parts of the business that I wanted to do going forward. So, as much as it was a really hard decision, it was actually kind of an easy decision because I got to write my own job description for what it means to be an executive chairwoman and founder, and just keep the pieces that get me excited for the next decade. And then everything else I could hand off to someone that was going to be just as excited and jazzed up to do those things.
That's awesome. I love the notion that you also wrote your job description, right? Because I think so often one of the most important things we do in building out the business is writing those job descriptions and actually mapping the lanes so that people aren't overlapping. So you created Groundswell
Yes.
when I think it was in February as well of last year. Can you tell us a little bit about that model, what prompted you to start it, and how you work with partners?
Sure. So Groundswell is something had been thinking about for a long time, and it was really why I wanted to get a CEO in so I could go off and work on this initiative. It's really a company within Swell, an initiative within Swell that I've started. I call it my SaaS, my sustainability as a service. And really what it is, it's helping really large, mostly very large, multi-billion-dollar organizations think about sustainability in a different way. And what I found over, the last number of years of working with Swell and working with other partners is that sustainability is part of the mission of what a lot of companies are doing. And they have put out some really good, big ESG goals that happen, somewhere within the company, but they're not always tied to, the bottom line of the company or what the executive strategy is. And there always seemed to be some challenge to executing upon what was in the goals. And what I thought with Groundswell is that I could use sort of the baked in knowledge that I had and Swell had, really being early in sustainability and thinking about some of these solutions, whether it's, new products, new ways of consuming, packaging, supply chain, all that stuff. But could I use sort of the scrappiness and the nimbleness of Swell to help these bigger companies by partnering together go further faster? And so what I'm super excited about is actually in these partnerships and sort of helping break down, what are the goals and what are the actions and how do we get started? And in some cases, it's as easy as sort of, using products that Swell has in the pipeline. And in some, there are really large, multi-year, tons of brain damage, thinking about consumption and systems completely differently. But what really gets me excited is that we're going to have such a big impact on sustainability and the future by really thinking about, how do we partner together? So to me, it's almost like a startup all over again. I don't think I've ever been so excited as much as I'm exhausted. I've been doing the same thing forever. It's really great as an entrepreneur in a purpose and mission driven company to go back to that North Star and think if I was starting the company today, how would I do it differently? And how would I do it better? And PS, how can I use the whole great team that I've already acquired and is with me on this journey to also get excited about what we're doing in the next decade and beyond.
I love that. You get to start over again. That's it's every founder's dream. Founders of the core builders. And here you are building again, but within the organization that you so love and you started. We're going to wrap soon. I do have one more question for you. And then just friendly reminder to everybody watching, we're actually going to be bringing Sarah into the 10th house, our private community, to do an Ask Me Anything or an AMA. So super excited to do that and definitely join us there. But for our parting words, Sarah, what is the most impactful piece of advice you've received along your journey as you're building this business? And then in sort of the new era of Swell and given the pandemic, any transformative things you've learned over this past year and a half that you feel you could share with founders to help them?
Sure. If I had to give one piece of advice is don't go alone. It's communities like this. First of all, congratulations on the community that you've built and you're building. They're so helpful. Entrepreneurship is lonely and it's hard, but there's so much that you can learn from and you can do yourself with the support of others. If I could give any advice, it's surround yourself with these groups as much as possible and just to show up. I have a chipped nail today. I just want to show everybody. You don't have to be perfect. Just show up. Just show up. And I think the thing is it's really hard when you show up in these communities not to want to be perfect all the time. How's your business? It's great. How are your numbers? How's the strategy? But you're not going to walk. Yeah, but you're not going to walk away from that community having learned a thing. Is more that if you could walk into a community and however you build that, if it's officially, a community like this, if it's mentorship, if it's surrounding yourself with other founders, and just admit when things aren't going well and when you could use some help. I think that's when you get the most out of it. It shows how vulnerable you
Yeah.
are, but also it allows others to share with you. I mean, Swell would not be the company that it is today if I didn't have people in networks help me with my challenges. And so if only I had raised my hand sooner and said, hey, it's not perfect and I could use some help.
Yeah.
I really think everybody really would like to help each other. You just have to be really willing to sort of ask for it and, show up and join groups like this. So I would say that would be my advice. And then your second question about the pandemic is, it's been hard. Like I thought I had seen it all and learned everything, and man, it just kicked my butt this year. But it has also made me realize like there's still so much to learn.
Yeah.
I think a couple things. It's really allowed me to see my team in a different way. The fact that we get to see our messy unmade beds and cats and plants and kids and kitchens and I was on a Zoom earlier this year and I was putting something in the crock pot and I forgot to turn off the video and it was just but we are laughing together, like customer engagement's high, employee engagement's high, like I'm seeing the whole person, and I really wish I had taken the time to do that while we were all so committed to our time in the office. And it kind of gets back to like not being perfect, even with the team. It's been so nice to just kind of have a sense of humor and like see each other in a different way. So I really think that's been the silver lining of this whole time. As much as I can't wait to be back in the office and give everyone hugs, being home and really seeing the whole individual, I think has actually been really helpful for our team, over this really difficult time.
Yeah. And it's like in the go forward, how do we continue to bring that whole person to the office, right? When things go a little bit back to where they were. But I love that. And thank you for the shout out on community.
Mm-hmm.
It is a lonely thing and it's really hard and you have to ask for help. So thank you so much, Sarah. We will see you.
Thanks, Ellie.
Really appreciate it.
Take care.
And see you soon.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.